Так, можем мы сказать участникам, что они могут задавать вопросы на русском языке, да?
Да, конечно, да.
Окей. Okay, we have 12 participants. And we have time for now. Okay. 13, 14. Okay. 14 participants. I think that, dear Mrs. Gohar, you can begin your presentation. Your presentation about Armenian situation, the impact of anti-gender movements on the process of ratification of the Istanbul Convention in Armenia. Gohar is our partner as a gender expert in our gender network platform. Please, your floor.
Thank you very much, Antonina. Yes, I will speak in English because the results also we wrote in English already, so I think it will be easier to present in English. But of course, you can ask questions in Russian too if you want. So I will talk a little bit about the background of the process of implementation of the Istanbul Convention, and then Siran, my colleague and researcher on anti-gender movements, will continue and present the situation in general with anti-gender movements, attacks on civil society, their role, and just motivations, etc. So as all of you know, we conducted in 6 countries this quick survey. It was online survey due to COVID. Unfortunately, we couldn't meet with people in person, so it was online survey, and link was sent to the organizations, especially those that are part of the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum, but also wider to civil society. For now, and I don't think there will be more, it's 25 respondents that participated in the survey. And then, unfortunately, there were a lot of horrible events in Armenia, so it was not really relevant to send the link anymore. That's why we stopped sending it, but maybe we'll try once again. So what we realized from this quick survey that we've done, people were asked, in your opinion, how powerful these radical anti-gender movements in Armenia, and the majority, unfortunately, asked that they are powerful. They're quite powerful because we see their the level of damage that they're doing now, and even prior to war and COVID, they were protesting all over the place in front of the parliament, everywhere against the Istanbul Convention, and presenting it, as you know, in many our countries, that the situation as something like something that will ruin Armenian society and families, etc. And it's interesting that as for those bodies who stand behind the radical right anti-gender movements, the following 6 groups were identified. Not necessarily this is the reality, but this is what people in the civil society think. So the majority associated with church, that this is the main anti-gender movement active participant. Social media, which is also one of the main, like social media, of course, not all social media, but those that are, because these anti-gender movements also have their own social media now, and they're very active and popular there. It's the religious groups in general, political parties, political leaders also. So they're mostly those that the groups that the representatives of civil society believe that they are force behind this anti-gender movement. Also, when asked who from the human rights, what are the issues that they're attacking mostly? It's women's rights defenders. Mainly the attack is gender equality in general and also LGBTQ rights. And you can see from the table, so the percentages of attacks according to civil society on various groups. And women's rights defenders is it's the main group, unfortunately, as we can see and feel ourselves as well as women's rights defenders. And LGBTQI groups as well, of course, most impacted by anti-gender movements. So the role, also there was a question in our questionnaire about the role of the organizations and groups that can play in the formation, strengthening of the anti-gender movements. And again, here we can see religious groups, but also some civil society representatives, because this is one of the most threatening trend, I think, that anti-gender groups now also portraying themselves as civil society. And they represent civil society on various platforms, sometimes including even Eastern Partnership Forum groups, as we can see in many our countries. It's a very diverse groups, and unfortunately there are some who are also representatives of those groups. And social media is probably became one of the main platform where this hate speech and threats and discrimination against women's rights defenders and against the Istanbul Convention is happening. Because it's very easy to spread all these lies, manipulations, and then people will just believe whatever, some really not like popular. It can be any type of the social media that people would just follow and they don't know if it's true or not. Sometimes they will even take similar accounts. For example, there is a very progressive social media that is very pro-human rights. It's called ePress AM, but this anti-gender movement would take something like Express AM, which is very often people would not even think, they think it's this progressive media, and then read all these comments and things that, the Istanbul Convention is something that is going to destroy your family, and they would just follow that. There are so many manipulations that it's really, some of them humorous, some of them really funny, that I don't know, Elton John is going to take your children or their children will be sold to African plantations, and very, very awkward things. But sometimes, unfortunately, we can see that even people are affected by those type of fears. We also asked what is the message, like main messages that they're sending. And for example, the main messages, messengers among religious groups, bishops who are emphasizing the concept of Armenianness, so to speak, as the first nation to adopt the Christianity. Therefore, it should reject anything that is coming to destroy Christianity, etc. They're also manipulating a lot, not only religious groups, but there as well, that there are certain European values that are in contradictory to Armenian values, for example, but nobody can explain what does it mean. And this is another very threatening thing that we see, that these groups are basically hijacking the notions of national value, national tradition, everything. So they would stand with this big poster saying that the Istanbul Convention is again Armenian values. And people just see this, and it's very efficient sometimes, these visuals, and people wouldn't question what is Armenian value, why this Istanbul Convention is in contradiction with the values. It's just this visual, these posters that you see from everywhere. And unfortunately, we see now that it affected people and it continues to affect them. There are certain messages from the civil society, as I said, involved in the anti-gender movement. And their main discourse is that there are these pro-European, pro-Soros NGOs, including women's NGOs mainly, that are getting these grants from the West and destroying our values, etc. But here we are, other type of CSOs that are more like based on the traditional values, and we're trying to restore this traditional role of women, etc. There are also political parties, unfortunately. Fortunately, they are not the majority right now, and hopefully they will not be, but there are still political parties in the parliament that openly promote hate speech and openly basically supporting those anti-gender groups that are threatening people, that are sending a lot of death threats, literally like saying that we're going to kill you. Lara Aharonyan, many of you know her. She was the main target among women's rights defenders, and she was getting a lot of direct threats that she's going to be killed, and they're following her. And she applied to many times to the court, but unfortunately, because it's very difficult to punish them because of our legislation. Because we still don't have legislation on hate speech, unfortunately. And as I said, it's traditional media that is sending the same messages, and social media mainly. And there is also some financial institution, individual investment in the anti-gender propaganda. That is not very clear for the respondents. It wasn't. It's not very clear for us as well. We have some researches done, and on Monday, Arpi Manusyan will present that we have some kind of understanding where their financial resources are coming from, but it's not necessarily to not enough to generalize and to say that for example, they're completely financed by Russia. In many countries they are, as we know, but in the case of Armenia, it's more of a, I would claim it's a more like homegrown anti-gender movement, because they are financed by the ex-president of Armenia, ex-oligarchs that are now not in power anymore, but they're trying to manipulate a lot of things to destroy the current government as well through this type of associations, because they associate this government with the West, and saying that they're bringing all these pervert conventions, resolutions, everything to basically to destroy Armenia. Yeah, and about the Istanbul Convention, the impact of anti-gender movement reported to be mostly negative by the majority of the respondents. So there is an understanding among civil society that this anti-gender group played a very big role, and they basically destroyed the process in a way, because the convention should have been ratified last year. And then because of this pressure, I think it wasn't. And then again, all the time there is something that the convention is not ratified. And now I don't know if, honestly, when it will happen because of the situation in Armenia. But prior to the war and prior to COVID, these movements clearly negatively impacted the whole process of ratification, because the government was ready to ratify and even organized awareness raising campaign. I think there were some even, there was a will to ratify at least. So we don't know what will happen now. There was also a question in our questionnaire, as many of you know, how important is regional cooperation of the civil society on ratification of the Istanbul Convention, and it's in tune with our school today. So the importance of the regional cooperation was highlighted by the majority of the respondents. They expressed the significance of dialogue, experience exchange, joint project like this one, for example, that can change the whole discourse around the Istanbul Convention. one of the respondents expressed a thought that the joint participation and regional cooperation might neutralize the consequences of this movement also, as we have been discussing in our groups as well very often, that it should be a regional campaign as well, not just local campaigns. Yeah, I don't think I will take more time because I think Siran will continue with much more details about the anti-gender movements in Armenia. But I would stop here and also say that in general, at least those that answered the questionnaire, people were aware about the anti-gender movement, about their negative role, and highlight the importance of the regional cooperation that we're all trying to establish and to work towards. But it's a different question how it can be done and how we can have this regional impact. We're also part of other type of discussions with Women's Fund in Georgia, Ukraine, and Germany, and we were preparing a campaign. Unfortunately, because of the war, we can't implement it right now, but it was a very good campaign prepared by a German PR agency called Social, specifically on anti-gender movements in our countries, in 3 countries. And I think eventually we will be able to implement this, and I think it will have its impact because we can't just stay silent. We can't just ignore them because unfortunately they are becoming very powerful, these movements, and they're using all type of tools to promote hate speech, to promote their manipulations. And it seems to me that we have to be like, we're very modest in our approach, but probably we have to be more vocal and to have a regional voice, because it's not only about Armenia, Moldova, Ukraine, it's about the whole region, basically. Thank you very much. If there are questions, I can answer now or later after Siran's presentation. And I think Siran will continue here with much more details because she did her master degree on these issues and she knows very well about anti-gender movements and what they do in Armenia. And she has also recommendations how we can mitigate at least their impact. Thank you.
Hello.
Antonina, are there any questions? I'm sorry, because I can't see now. I don't think there are questions, so maybe Siran then will continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Gohar, for your presentation, a very interesting presentation. And if Siran, you can continue, please.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I'm Siran. Some of you know me and some of you don't know me. We've met with some of you, and perhaps you also remember from the other meetings. I will be speaking. I will have the presentation in English as well, also because it's based on my analysis that has been published in English. Is going to be published in English. I don't have quite a presentation. I mean, something to show you. Rather, it's a flow of the ideas that I want to share with you about the situation with anti-gender aggressions and anti-gender campaigns, movement in Armenia regarding the growing impossibility of doing research and teaching gender and sexuality in Armenia in different levels of educational system. So what I will do, what I've managed to do is have, if can I share the screen by myself, or
yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Okay. What I have here is this, so you will just focus. So you will be focused on this all the time.
Yes, we can see your presentation.
Thank you. It's not quite a presentation, but also just to make sure that we're all following the line. Thank you once again for inviting me to this school. This is a very important school, especially for the Eastern Partnership countries. I know it's not really the time, and I'm not going to address the elephant in the room. We all know what we're talking about. I know it's not hard. It's not only hard for us. It's not only hard for the sides of the conflict, perhaps. It's also hard for you, especially as allies for all of us. We know very well that it's very hard for you to address the issue. That's because we are staying in our feminist solidarity, and I really hope that this platform that has been created for many years and established for many years, based on your super big efforts, all efforts from all the countries, will maintain its stability, and we will all have this, you know, solidarity, the very feminist solidarity that we can have. And thank you, Gohar, also for suggesting me for proposing to have this to have this presentation here. My presentation is based on different both academic and you know, practical, you know, materials. I will also address the very, maybe perhaps the beginnings of what happened with anti-genderism. I will challenge this idea that everything must come from west to east or from the north to south. I hope you will all agree with me with that. If not, we can just go ahead and discuss it more. But especially for doing researches and teaching, I really find it important when we go with our local standpoints, and we are not just copying and pasting whatever happened in West. It is also interesting for me that anti-gender movements became something very important only after they started to be active in Western countries, for instance, in Western Europe or in the US. This is also something that I'm going to tackle within my presentation. So, this meeting is about a specific topic. It is about anti-gender attacks and movements rising around the world, and also in the South Caucasus as well. And as part of South Caucasus, I will be presenting what I found out about Armenia. Well, as I have said already, for me, for instance, honestly, it's not a news. Like, anti-gender movements are not a news for me, at least. I mean, anti-genderism as a phenomenon was you know, it was for conservative and also transformative cultures and societies. It's not a news, because in Armenia we will always having this like little bit of backlash against whatever is about human rights and gender issues, and I don't think it's really something new for the whole world. This is what I see. This is what I tackle also in one of my articles from 2019 for the London School of Economics. And this is something that I really want to point out, that this West and East division must be addressed in this point, in this agenda as well. Anti-gender attacks are widespread. They are active in Europe, in the United States, Latin America, Central Asia, and we know already that in the South Caucasus they are active too, and they are active in a very specific manner, perhaps. And we want it or not, these mobilizations basically have most of the characteristics of the movements. They are sponsored, they have their own ideology, they have their agenda, they have their followers, their adherents, and so on. So basically, this is kind of a this is practically the theoretical grounds of the something to be called the movement. Some of them, of course. Anti-gender movements are mobilized and also mobilize big groups. As Gohar already mentioned, they use a lot of social media, and social media is working very well in the Armenian context. They are having huge groups in Armenia, huge social media, Facebook and other platform groups, and they are spreading misinformation, disinformation all over these groups. And basically they are also spreading lies about all the political processes in Armenia as well. This is very important to address too. Yes, and they are mobilizing big groups of people of different backgrounds. This is also important because as far as observations let us see, there is no specific, for instance, educational criteria that we can put behind these people, because people are just following the news and just following the ideology they are promoting. And it doesn't matter if they have a degree in higher education or not. Many of the university professors and researchers also have the same anti-gender ideologies as these groups and attackers have. Some of basically, I've talked about calling them movements, but I know that some of my colleagues here in Armenia are reluctant to call them movements. I know the point when equated to the feminist movements or women's movements or ecological movements. My colleagues say that these anti-gender groups, they don't deserve to be called feminists. And I really understand this, and I do understand this, and I like that, and I like that approach very much. But I really want us to get over our emotions, at least maybe during this presentation. Well, there are questions that I always ask myself about the anti-gender movements. Do these movements have the same manifestations everywhere? Yes, no, almost. We can say that all the answers count. Yes, they are mobilizing with religious and fundamentalist grounds, which in their turn have huge crowds behind them. Of course, religious institutions are always based on huge crowds. They are tackling the issues of so-called gender ideology. They are calling it gender ideology, whatever is connected, linked with gender. They also tackle the concept of gender as something related to pervert meanings. Gender is equated with fascism in all the rhetoric of anti-gender movements. I guess everywhere. In some cases, gender ideology also equals to communism. I know a very prominent Polish gender studies scholar, Agnieszka Graf, stated a couple of years ago when the thing started to happen in Poland and anti-gender movement started to be active in Poland, that at the beginning of anti-gender mobilizations, one of the bishops in Poland said that gender is worse than communism and fascism altogether. Why I find this very important, because Armenia is a post-communist, post-Soviet country, and and this is very important, and this is very interesting how they are switching the narrative, right? Switching the switching the narrative, switching the story, the history, and trying to present so-called gender ideology as something villain. So further, there are some other questions that I have. Do these movements have similar scenarios in different countries? I guess yes. Are they being manifested in the same ways? Perhaps we can say that yes. Are they tackling the same issues? Yes, they are tackling nationalism, so-called national interests, which is very interesting in terms of studies in nationalism and gender. They are also tackling the heteronormative concept of the family. The family is sacred. The family is something that we cannot really touch. The societal order must not be, shattered, and so on. There is another narrative that is being built under anti-gender movements, also in Armenia, that the church is under attack. Also, we all know that you know, this anti-genderism is based very much on evangelism, Catholicism, and the Christian church. So Christian church is actually giving very profound backlash to the gender ideology as well, despite the fact that the different pops are talking in different with different narratives about gender and gender equality. Yes, and yesterday in the evening, and I can definitely, if I was on another conference on anti-genderism. There was an international conference. There were people from Poland, Serbia, Bosnia, and they were talking about the you know, this part of the world. And there was a amazing amazing scholar from Serbia, Slobodanka Dekic. And she was presenting some amazing findings from their Serbian experience, and we were discussing that other characteristics, some other characteristics of anti-genderism as well. And I guess somebody is waiting to be admitted to this Zoom call right now. Yes, so they are also tackling the issue of this pure people, right? This is also going profoundly into pure nationalism, etc. Women are being considered as only mothers. Women cannot do anything but being mothers. LGBTIQ plus people are perverts and they don't have any rights to exist in the world as within this narrative of anti-gender groups. Well, again, if we are coming back to the scenarios, yes, scenarios are almost the same in different countries. Also, the phases of attacks are the same. Gender-related, you know, this general legislations, gender policies, Istanbul Convention, other international and local documents and papers are being, you know, stagely, you know, like attacked by in different stages in different countries, but they are following each other, this event. And there are many different right now there are many different discourse analysis scholars who are analyzing the gender discourse in different countries, and one of them is Ruth Wodak, who is a discourse analysis scholar, and she has an amazing you know, timeline for anti-gender attacks in Austria. Well, so anti-genderism is definitely a tool to be used against progressive and democratic policies and governments, against liberal ideas, against liberalism, with the use of this new type of democracy, the illiberal democratic tools, with the use of illiberal democracy, such as in Hungary, which we've seen, and one of the examples of against research and teaching gender studies is the closure of the Central European University and the attacks against Central European University, and especially gender studies program within that university. I'm very much concerned in that matter too, because I'm also an alumna of Central European University, and the same department. So I'm really fond of this question, and I really hope that something will be changing in Hungary as well. In some countries, anti-genderism is used. It's very interesting. It's very connected also to politics. So in some countries, it is a tool against the progressive governments, such as in the Armenian case, for example, which is intertwined with the civil society that is progressive too. So basically, in some countries, anti-genderism is used as a tool against progressive governments, or it's used against progressive civil society that try to push the gender you know, sensitive projects and gender mainstreaming into the policies of the countries. My colleague Arti Manusyan next week she will have her great presentation on the situation with these groups again in Armenia, and I'm sure it will be of your great interest, because I really love that that research, and I really think that the research that she and her colleagues did is groundbreaking, because they're tackling many different aspects of anti-genderism and manifestation of anti-genderism within the country. There's many questions that I have actually when I talk about anti-genderism and when I think about anti-genderism. One of the major, well, every time I need to write something about this movement, and every time I need to give a presentation on anti-genderism, I ask myself this specific question: do I want to make a kind of a career on anti-gender groups or not? And my first answer is no, because honestly, I really think that I don't want to go. I don't want to study something that is not of my interest. Then I think a bit more about this question, and it's still no, because it's still emotional, because I really need to calm down my emotions regarding anti-genderism. And then I ask myself why it's still no. There is this dilemma I find myself in, and I always talk about my own perspective, even when I do the research, because I really find important the feminist standpoint, and I really find where do I locate myself and how do I approach the research. There is this dilemma that I have, whether I have to study what my ideological opponents are doing against my views, or should I better concentrate on the topics I'm interested in the most, like sexuality, like feminist movements, like gender issues, and gender identity, etc. I think about this a lot, and the idea is still not very well cooked. I still have the dilemma, and then I realized that there is a moment when it's impossible to study what I want to study. It's impossible to conduct a research on something that I really want to research, to study, because of these groups, because of the anti-gender groups. Because it's really hard to go into the schools to talk to the students, to go to the universities to talk about the students, to talk with the students about gender issues, because all this groundless interpretation of gender ideology, gender, sexuality, etc. is I don't know, it's not really giving a ground. It's not really giving a ground for everyone to discuss what's the real meanings of the gender so-called ideology is. As I have said already, there are several things that are specifically refer to anti-genderism and their impact on doing research, implementing, organizing researches. Basically, many organizations that are doing research and many NGOs, including also Women's Resource Center, and their leaders have been accused in destroying families. As a matter of fact, anti-genderism is always tackling the idea of family, the real family. And in case of Armenia, it's like the Armenian family. In case of Georgia, it's the Georgian family. In case of France, it's the French family, etc. So these and other accusations have significantly dropped the status and respect towards these organizations, these people, scholars who are engaged within this field of studies. So now I really want to focus on the specific challenges that I came up with within my analysis. Should I wait for the end of my presentation and then you will have questions, or maybe you want to have questions now? What is the best way? Perhaps I have to finish. I don't hear you. Okay, let me, okay.
Okay, thank you very much, dear Siran.
I'm sorry, I didn't finish. I was asking whether there are questions, so I can continue.
Okay, if we have no questions, please continue. We have no questions now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the main issue for studying gender and related topics such as sexuality and feminism in its wider spectrum is the fear of the word gender. Basically, we are, especially in Armenia, we have this problem of always talking about, about gender as something that is coming to destroy you, or at some point there was a Okay, thank you. So the main issue for studying gender and related topics in its wider spectrum is the fear of the word gender, which is a worldwide problem nowadays. Using the word gender in most of the cases means being accused in studying something hidden, such as LGBTIQ related issues. The discourse of secret concepts with gender was also present in Poland, and when anti-genders and priests accused gender studies of being both a perversion and a perverted way of seeing the world order. At the beginning of anti-gender attacks in Armenia in 2013, when the law on gender equality has been adopted, both the public and members of the parliament understood gender to refer to issues about women's rights, inequality, and violence. But then a group of people, mostly men and women occasionally, this is a concrete case, have started to harshly criticize the law, the concept of gender, and other terms defined within the law. So basically, they were accusing the law for being a perversion and a European or Western attempt to destroy the Armenian families. Much like in other countries that have already witnessed these kinds of, attacks, it was not taken that seriously at the beginning in Armenia as well. I remember we were all saying that it's not really serious. They are eventually going to stop, but they didn't. I remember we had many discussions with Gohar as well. But then actively starting from May 2013, the word gender was harshly criticized by the nationalist groups and activists. It was demonized as in the other countries, such as, Hungary, such as Poland. As a result of these attacks, the parliament adopted only a few months later in 2013, the new version of the law. The content was the same, but the word gender in the title has been replaced by the words of women and men. So right now, for now, it's not a law on gender equality because of the gender attack, anti-gender attacks, but it's a law on equal rights and equal opportunities for women and men in Armenia. Studying LGBTIQ related topics is another challenge that gender studies scholars may face during their research journeys in Armenia. Most of the time, the mentioning of the topic of homosexual behavior itself meets rejection. I remember we've had, again with Gohar, we've had several studies and several, and there were data collection processes that we found out that there are many people who are, associating and comparing LGBT people with destroyers of the family, and there were absolutely horrible comparisons of LGBTIQ people with the rotten piece in the plate of meat. This was one of the horrible, descriptions of LGBTIQ people. These are the known discourses actively used by the followers of the anti-gender movement. These are widespread, as we've already said, and they are using many different platforms to promote their ideas. So, of course, the LGBTIQ related agenda is something like a propaganda. And if you're trying to propose anti-discrimination policies, it's also considered as propaganda of something pervert. But anyways, this topic is also still active, and many organizations, and one of the main, active organization is Pink Armenia NGO, who is doing the hard work of promoting the LGBTIQ rights. Well, although it's difficult to have a radically progressive curricula on sexual education in schools, this is another point, a very important point in the discussions of anti-genderism. Although it's difficult to have this progressive curricula on sexual education in schools, or teach the subject of sexual health and sexuality in its core, there are still mandatory courses that we have in our schools in Armenia, targeting the so-called healthy lifestyle and including only few topics of sexual education as well, such as contraception, how to protect from STIs, etc. Some like general concepts that are not really related to sexual preferences and gender identity. One of the recent studies by Women's Resource Center stated that the courses are provided with unsatisfactory content, and there should be something to change this, because it's very important to change also change the curricula in schools as well. Evidence of this topic reveals also that evidence on this topic reveals also that some teachers are even spreading incorrect information on gender, sexuality, and especially homosexuality. We've witnessed, also in interviews with teachers that they are, they just don't know what to say, what to tell to students, and they are just, making up their minds and saying something about homosexuality, about sexuality in general, and gender equality, etc. Based on my personal experience, the chances on collecting significant materials and data on abortion, the topic of abortion, is also problematic. In 2019, when I was trying to do my research on abortion with health specialists, with medical specialists performing abortions, I had a problem, first of all, of reaching out to them, since there were many refusals from the medical experts they were just refusing to participate in an interview on that topic. And second, an entire conversation with medical practitioners whom I could actually find and do the interviews with. The entire conversation could get lost in the discussions of the prenatal sex selection or sex selective abortions, which is of course an important topic for the Armenian society as well, but it's not what I wanted to come up with. And this research is also available online, I guess, with the English summary. It's also conducted for Women's Resource Center. There's also much to do with the connotations of the word feminism in the Armenian context, because there are many interpretations of feminism. Interestingly, when women's writings on the importance of education for women and girls before the Soviet Armenian era, if the topic is about the women's writings on importance of education, it is widely accepted. But only on the condition that feminism is presented in a very nationalist vein, like the Armenian women, the Armenian education system, the Armenian girls. This is this vein that is being used. This means that feminism can only be referred to the historical courage of the Armenian queens, pre and post-genocidal happenings as well. These are also important to tackle. Yes, but the word feminism in its more modern way of using it is not really acceptable. So in another vein, if feminism refers to queerness, to being queer, to being non-traditional, and these kinds of topics, it is actually, and the topics that point out the spectrum and fluidity of gender and gender identity, also women's bodies and sexuality, feminists are more often presented as villains, agents of George Soros, and again, as destroyers of the Armenian traditional family. There are also topics in between, such as violence against women, that you can actually tackle, or sexual violence. You can actually tackle this in your research. In the wider discourse, of course, both violence and harassment are generally perceived as contradictory to Armenian values, to the Armenian cultures. Of course, we all respect our mothers, our sisters, etc. However, the seriousness of the cases of sexual violence and the violence against women is based on three, well, I came up with three. We can actually add some more, but so far I came up with 3 points. The level of seriousness and acceptability of the cases of sexual violence depend on, first of all, the person talking about it, whether it's an activist or a state official or a young girl or someone, you know, a woman who's been a victim of sexual or domestic violence with children. Second point is who is the victim of the abuse, whether it's a child, it's a young girl, or it's a elderly woman, and how the media is covering the topic. This is also important. So this is creating this atmosphere of kind of impossibility to tackle these issues too. And of course, being a feminist researcher is another challenge that gender studies scholars and disciplinary affiliated researchers may face. On the one hand, expressing feminist ideas, being critical in your research or your study is one thing, of course. On the other hand, strictly pointing out the effects of patriarchal structure and thinking and pushing law and policy makers to count these ideas as well, it's different. There are limits to what can be pushed and what cannot. Specifically, it highly depends on the topic of discussion as well, especially in persistence of anti-gender attacks. For instance, abortions and progressive sexual education in schools are mostly a big, no-go. But in comparison, women's economic participation or political empowerment, political participation and promotion are very important topic for everyone. Also, the new governmental program is pushing the economic activity of every single citizen within the country, but the entire governmental program does not mention the word women in the program. That's very interesting. I'm almost coming to the end of my presentation. There is 2 points that I want to make, and I will finish my presentation. Studying and researching gender, sexuality, and feminism as a course at higher education system is not an easy task to complete. Even most of the social science courses and curricula, like the basic readings on gender, feminism, and sexuality, are less and less being presented as topics for doctoral research. Moreover, a basic content analysis of the bulletin, it's an academic journal of the Yerevan State University, revealed and the analysis was conducted by our center at Yerevan State University, the Gender Studies Center. So this analysis revealed an interesting image of studying and publishing on gender and women. From all 2,406 only social science related articles published since 1990, in this academic journal, only 21 articles referred or tackled gender or women's issues directly or indirectly. So you may also see what is the level of accepting, taking the gender issues in academia, the level of seriousness, of tackling the gender issues in academia. At the same time, although there is a lack of academic acceptance of gender studies as a serious discipline, there are still few prominent researchers pushing the topic within the academia, which is very important. And they are pushing this despite the resistance, despite the counter-resistance and the backlash against feminism and feminist research. One of the main challenges faced by these scholars and researchers is that most of the times the resources allocated for especially qualitative researchers with more in-depth analysis are very scarce, and the resources are scarce. The people are not really interested to go into this topic. So basically why they should go if the resources are scarce. Yeah, and most of the research, and you know, most of the research, really good, very important research for the Armenia on gender, on feminism, on sexuality is being done by only few NGOs in Armenia, and also maybe international agencies perhaps. Mostly the quantitative analysis, the quantitative data collection is being done also by the international agencies in Armenia, like World Bank, like UN agencies, etc. But these also the qualitative part is very in-depth, is being implemented in-depthly by NGOs in Armenia. But the thing is that these researches are only part of projects that are being mostly workshop or training based. So these projects are not for researchers per se, but the researchers are the very small part of the projects that these NGOs are having. So basically, this is not only bringing the academic value to gender studies in order to avoid this misinterpretation of gender and gender studies, discipline. Yeah, so these are some of the points that I've collected for my analysis. There are many other things that I don't want to overwhelm you with, but this was what I've put in my presentation for today. But I really want to finish this on a positive note as well, because yes, we are, and coming back to the idea that I've mentioned about whether I want or I don't want to do a career on anti-genderism. This is the point that I always make. Even though these attacks are consistent, and even though these ideas are sometimes very hard to accept on our own personal level and on a level of being feminist, I really find it important to keep going, keep exploring the possibilities of feminist movement in this atmosphere as well. Because to keep the positive mind in this positive attitude, let's take this as a challenge rather than something that is going to stop our work on gender issues and promoting gender equality and feminism. Thank you very much. I hope it was interesting for you. Yeah, and I'm ready for the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Siran, for your so detailed description of information on challenges of organizing and implementing gender and sexuality research and training in the time of anti-gender aggressions in Armenia. Thank you very much. It was wonderful. Well, and please, participants, if you have any questions, you can ask Siran, or you can ask Gohar. Or we can discuss this situation and your opinions and suggestions.
I was actually wondering what is now happening in... Hello, my name is Marina. I'm from Belarus. And I'm wondering what is now happening in Armenia in terms of the Istanbul Convention, and what is the anti-gender movement doing now? Yes, because I understand that the strategy is to block yeah, any kind of attempts even to sign or ratify the convention. So is there any, I don't know, good news maybe on that?
Maybe I can.
Yeah, sure.
And then Siran will continue because, sorry, in the beginning I talked about that. The process stopped, first of all, because of the COVID, but then because of the war in Armenia. But these movements were very active, but nevertheless, the government was very committed to ratify the convention. So the idea of ratification came from the government, actually, and they were planning on implementing large-scale awareness-raising campaign with the Human Rights Defender Office, UN, etc. I think they started something, but then these anti-gender groups started to protest in front of the parliament all the time. That, I don't know, probably for 1 year they were standing there. And then COVID started, they couldn't protest anymore. And the protests were quite, it wasn't a protest, it was just yelling at people and saying that if you're not going to sign this, no, just asking, do you want your children to become homosexual? And if not, then you have to sign here. So basically that was their very aggressive campaign that they were doing. But I think there was a will, and still hopefully is, to ratify. But it's just now not the time at all. So unfortunately the process stopped, and many other processes because of the war now, not because of their pressure even from, but yeah. So Siran can add, I think, if you have more information.
No, yeah, actually that's what I was going to say, that because many things have stopped now because of the war, and many priorities have changed after all these events. Yeah, priorities have changed, and at the beginning, Gohar was presenting this opportunity for us to actually have a campaign to tackle this issue in Armenia as well. But because of the war, it's absolutely losing the convenience, you know, to come up with an international campaign, because nobody, let's be honest, most of the times nobody cares about gender issues if you're not pushing them by yourself. And right now, even more people just don't have time to listen to this. And this is the classic thing, you know, all the times in all the stages of history, whenever conflicts happened or whenever pandemics happened, all the issues concerning women and gender and sexuality and feminism, everything stepped down or stepped to another level of importance. So it's not really important for now, I guess, for many people. And it will be really hard for many campaigners, you know, for us to push this agenda right now. It's really hard, but we also understand the point is that we also understand the situation, but it's really unfair that so many things that have been done during all these years are going to be pushed back because of this situation. All the progress that was being made is going to be pushed far back, I guess. Yeah. Thank you for your question.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you, Marina, for your question. Yes, of course. And thank you, Siran and Gohar, for your answers. Thank you very much. We have other questions. Christina, have you a question? Am I right? No? We have time for discussion, and if any of participants would like to say something, please, you have such a possibility now.
I was wondering. Yeah, sorry.
Please, Zilika. Okay. Lika, it's your floor. Please switch on the microphone.
Yes. Thank you very much for your very informative and very strong presentations. What I wonder, what would you, how you think, what would be the best messaging for Armenia? Well, yesterday, there was a very good presentation on importance of counter messaging and counter actions and counter campaigns from our side. What is your understanding? What emotional motives will today, for example, after this trauma, will work in Armenia? How you perceive it? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. Who can answer? Siran?
Yes, maybe I'll take this question first, and maybe Gohar will also continue, add something. Thank you for that question. That is a very interesting question, because that's what we were referring to when we were saying that, for instance, as the Women's Fund Armenia, we were trying to come up with the counter messaging. Yeah. This is one of the things that we were working on, and several civil society organizations were participating with us in this discussions in order to come up with an perhaps international media, so maybe only social media or in general media campaign. The point is that we couldn't finish with the wording because of the situation, because of the war, but definitely we're going to work on that again, to continue to work on that. Because it's still a burning issue for us.
Yeah, I will add. Thank you, Lika. It's really, I think it's the toughest question. It's always been, and now even more after this horrible situation. I think, as we yesterday were discussing, there will be a rise of even more nationalism and militarization, and it will be even more difficult for us to do this campaigns. But we have been discussing this issue for many years, and we came to this conclusion that it's better for us, I don't know, or more efficient, just to continue doing what we're doing, because if we're trying to oppose their messages or to come with counter messages, it's just not very efficient. So we decided that we will just do to talk about the role of women's rights defenders, or just to present our work, not focus so much on counter messages, because then we're engaging in their game, so to speak. But also we are, of course, as we have been saying, we have this campaign that was planned, and now hopefully later, maybe next year, of course, already we will implement. This campaign it is about counter messages, but not so much like, they're saying you're perverts, so let's come up with something else. No, but just to show our work, and just to, to present our work in the way that we want it to be presented, because they hijacked also our discourse. They presented us. Yeah, we're not presenting ourselves, but they're presenting us. So it's very awkward, very strange situation that we all are in many countries. But I think that's the conclusion we came. Maybe that's not the best, but so far we wanna just to show our work. And even I remember there was a discussion to make a sort of movie. Or like a soap opera about women's rights defenders in Armenia, because there were some discussions that, in many countries, like, for example, Law and Order, the TV show, right? The TV show, it was meant to increase the role of the police. So, or some others like about doctors, about medical workers. So maybe that type of, I don't know, TV show can help, but it's really costly and it's not very easy, of course, to do. But I think there were at some point discussions, just daily life of human rights defender. How do people live, what they do, what kind of people they are, their families, etc. So just to try to increase the role. In my opinion, that's the best, because now the role is very really manipulated and not presented the way it's not our messaging there. That's the problem. It's their messaging about us.
Yeah.
You're welcome. But of course, as you said, and many of us understand, it's just going to be very tough with sex-selective abortions also, and with all other issues that we were using as an argument as well. Now these arguments are destroyed, basically. These arguments will be very difficult to present and to justify because of the rise of this, militarization, nationalism, all these things that they're basically are going to push us back for many years.
I just want to intervene, if I can. I just want to bring the example of post-war situation concerning women's rights in Georgia in 2008.
Yeah.
What it caused and what a pushback we had in all aspects. And I would even say more that it's obvious, it's undisputable, because even in committee, when we look through reports of different countries, post-war countries, it shows huge rise of violence against women, failure to address women's economic and social needs, and etc. So the picture is everywhere this similar. But for Georgia, it was very, very painful. Violence against women's human rights defenders during 3 years. There were more than 10 attacks on different offices of women's human or LGBTI organizations. So it's indicators which should be demonstrated and which should be discussed, I think, and even we can organize regional discourse regarding it and bringing old and new data all together. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very important. I think we've been thinking about it just to connect with more post-war, funds, organizations that worked in these conditions, that worked in this humanitarian, basically, crisis, and what to do with. First of all, how to continue our work, but also to protect ourselves, because it's not even only about women's rights now, but also because many women's rights organizations and some human rights as well are, of course, talking about peace and the importance of peace building. And the attacks are also even more severe because of that now. Not even because of promoting gender equality, but also because we have been speaking about the importance of peace building. And they basically, yes, a couple of days ago, the office of Soros Foundation was attacked, and some others too. Helsinki committee. So yeah, the process has started already.
Okay, Nika?
Can I?
Yes, yes.
Yes, and I also want to add that it is very important to point out that there will be post-war recovery processes. And it's very important that activist groups within the country put gender equality in the center of recovery processes, as we tried during the pandemic to put and push for women's rights and gender equality within the pandemic setting, post-pandemic recovery setting. So I think it's a huge area. We can work together and we can bring all our data to make this evidence even more clear.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I think that I don't know if you think about it, but in this situation, I have a question to you, Siran and Gohar. If you have elaborated such action plans, security and for safety of the activists of feminist movements, for activists of CSOs, gender CSOs, and activists of CSOs and security of your organizations as well. Do you have such plans or strategies or plans of actions?
We have plans for many years already, not now, but well, yeah, we have, for example, we secured ourselves with cameras and with digital security also is one of our priorities. We also, always interview everybody who is subscribing to attend our trainings, for example, because you never know who can come. But mainly it's the cameras that we have, and also like if things are really, because there were threats, direct threats to blow up the center, it was in 2013, or some direct death threats to Lara, of course we apply to the police. These are our measures for now. And also writing about those threats on social media, informing that we're receiving these threats. So I think for now, these are our plans.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer, Har. Have we another questions? Or maybe Oksana, would you like to?
I think Marta had a question also.
Marta, please, your floor, please.
Я буду по-русски, можно, потому что вы знаете, что я очень так всегда восторгаюсь вашими результатами и вашим спокойствием. И действительно, это очень в таких трудных обстоятельствах, как у вас сейчас, и делать то, что администрировать центр для женщин, которые подвергаются сексуальному насилию, администрировать женский фонд, администрировать большую организацию, преподавать в университете. Я действительно не понимаю, как это может делать один человек, даже с такой крутой командой, как вы, как у вас. И большое спасибо за презентацию и тут интересные такие наблюдения. Я хочу спросить, вот в этих условиях, в которых вы сейчас проживаете этот опыт, что помогает и на что вы можете опираться и Можем ли мы думать о том, как в нашем феминистическом движении, феминизме делать такие опоры, которые в особенно трудные ситуации мы можем использовать для поддержки, для усиления. Это могут быть какие-то идеи не только личного характера или команды, но и международные, и, может, идеи для доноров, идеи для наших сетей, для нашего GNEP. То есть, что бы помогло сейчас, например, вам?
Спасибо большое, Марта, во-первых, за ваши теплые слова, поскольку действительно очень трудно. Я не знаю, что бы сейчас помогло. Вы говорите, на что мы опираемся, я думаю, на друг друга, во-первых, потому что это единственное, что у нас сейчас есть, и мы опираемся на... У нас есть разные группы, платформы, где мы... Там очень мало кто остался в этих платформах, к сожалению, потому что не все разделяют нашу позицию, не все, в принципе, да, как бы считают, что вот все, что сейчас происходит, совершенно неоднозначно, конечно, воспринимается, в том числе в гражданском обществе. Но вот это то, что у нас осталось. Я не знаю вообще, что бы сейчас помогло, но я знаю точно, что когда мне все время писали, как вы, многие, ну, не многие, конечно, к сожалению, но писали. Наши друзья из диаспоры, предположим. Я не могу, я не знаю, как я себя чувствую, и совершенно не хочу даже разговаривать, к сожалению, вот объяснить, как я себя чувствую, я сейчас не могу. Абсолютно ужасная ситуация психологическая у многих из нас. И поддержка, да, вот ваши слова, то, что вот это, знаете, это очень, конечно, очень много значит для всех нас. Но вот многие предлагали, давайте встретимся, там психологические какие-то тренинги, и все. И мы обратились, и вот Сиран писала нашим партнерам, никто не захотел тогда, сейчас, наверное, уже будет легче. Но в этот момент просто вот, ну, совершенный ступор, не знаешь, как ты себя чувствуешь, и не хочешь вообще ничего просто объяснять и разговаривать. Я не знаю, что можно сделать вообще в долгосрочном таком видении для нас, для наших групп. Мне кажется, что нужно подумать об этом. Какая-то поддержка все-таки нам всем не помешает, потому что никто не знаешь, в какой ситуации ты можешь оказаться завтра. Мы тоже не предполагали, что до такой степени вот такая катастрофа возможна. Наверное, какие-то, вот, ну, действительно трудно сейчас. Мне лично сейчас очень трудно сказать, что бы мне помогло. Я когда вот сейчас так считаю, но просто, наверное, какие-то слова поддержки, может быть, слова, что вот мы, да, разделяем как бы вашу вот эту ситуацию, понимаем, потому что, к сожалению, молчание очень многих наших коллег, оно было шокирующим, просто шокирующим для всех, для многих, для гражданского общества. Это была такая большая пощечина также, потому что та реакция, которая была у наших коллег из многих международных организаций, она просто вопиющая. Настолько, такое отвращение, если честно, сейчас у многих из нас к международным организациям, что я не знаю, как это доверие вообще можно будет восстановить, потому что такая вот эта нейтральность, токсичная нейтральность, я думаю. Конечно, я не хочу сейчас вдаваться в подробности и говорить, где, что, кто, какую ракету, куда ударил и что. Это абсолютно нонсенс сейчас разговаривать об этом, но когда репорты о том, что ISIS находится на территории уже Нагорного Карабаха, люди отрывают людям головы, уши, и все, и эти репорты там, и опять-таки говорить о какой-то нейтральности в этой ситуации, для меня это просто удивительно. Поэтому вот что может помочь, я не знаю, что может помочь. Может быть, у вас есть какие-то более рациональные предложения, потому что я думаю, мы сейчас все в очень эмоциональном находимся состоянии, и нам, честно говоря, сложно говорить вот объективно, чтобы помогло, не знаю. Ну, спасибо вам, конечно, большое за ваши слова и всегда за вашу поддержку. Это очень-очень действительно очень ценим мы и всегда так знаем, что есть на кого опереться.
Большое спасибо вам,
Очень
да,
хочется
да,
просто обнять и
да.
такое тепло передать.
Виртуально мы все с вами, Гохар. Я хочу сказать, что я была в подобной ситуации, ну как, одну такую подобную ситуацию я помню, это когда была международная конференция за демократию в Варшаве, и, ну сейчас я точно не вспомню год, это когда начиналась только война в Сирии, и представители Сирии приехали, и они говорили, ну вот в нас стреляют, вы, и европейское, ну как бы сообщество, вы за демократию. Почему вы мы к вам обращаемся, мы обращаемся во многие международные организации, и никто нам не помогает. У нас война, у нас страшно, что происходит, активисты гражданского общества подвергаются репрессиям, и нас неоднократно уже стреляли, да, ну, очень тяжело. И даже на такой конференции международной особого отклика это не получилось. И вы знаете исторически, что происходило дальше. Людям просто пришлось оттуда бежать. Поэтому, Гохар, это на сегодня ситуация, как бы несколько раз, вот, как говорят и белорусы, тоже у них похожая ситуация.
Да.
Мы с вами, мы за вас, мы очень солидарны, мы очень за вас переживаем. И чем только мы сможем, мы, конечно, постараемся поддержать. Я знаю, что еще несколько человек хотят тоже высказаться. Да. Ирина Соломатина,
пожалуйста. Да. То есть, Гохар, то есть очень классные доклады, то есть спасибо большое. Но у меня такой вопрос. Вот очень много было сделано акцента на то, что, опять же, в исследованиях там и так далее, делается вот такой акцент, что ли, вот там, вот именно армянская женщина. То есть вот какой-то такой концепт национального, ну, как бы национальной некой своей особенной модели, да, потому что, например, в Беларуси, когда ссылаются на какой-то некий концепт, например, там, традиционной семьи, то вот эта национальная идентичность, например, вот эта national, вот этот, ну, как бы, она как бы проваливается. То есть, а вот у вас вот этот концепт вот этой армянской женщины, он что туда включает? И вообще он как-то трансформируется вот как бы с течением времени, да, или он все-таки остается как некий такой стабильный? И в целом, есть ли какие-то, я не знаю, там, манифесты, например, какие-то государственные документы, где, в принципе, хотя бы немножко прописываются составляющие некие вот этой вот национальной идентичности, именно армянской? Потому что, ну, вот что меня зацепило в докладах, это вот эта вот сторона, вот это вот, что делается такой акцент на некой вот ярко выраженной национальной идентичности, и поэтому сразу вопрос, а что она собой представляет, да, вот в концепции, например, даже вот такого гендерного подхода, то что такое армянин и что такое армянка, например, или что такое, например, там, армянская женщина, например, в национальной культуре, то есть как она репрезентируется и меняется ли этот образ. То есть я имею в виду, ну, понятно, что историки свое, литераторы свое, но вот новые исследователи, как вот, или там феминистские исследователи, как они это интерпретируют?
Очень интересный вопрос и сложный очень. Ну, в принципе, нигде, конечно, ничего и не прописано. Как раз вот все дело в том, что какой-то миф это абсолютный. Что такое армянская женщина или армянская вообще идентичность? Да, есть какие-то обсуждения на эту тему, более такие немножко на академическом уровне, конечно, что это все, естественно, какой-то, ну, то есть какая-то тара без контента абсолютного. И кто что хочет, туда может включать и включает феминистки, там включают, ну, предположим, есть у нас феминистски ориентированные писательницы, общественные деятели, которые там в 18 веке, не знаю, в 19 выступали, мы апеллируем, конечно, вот к ним, да, вот что это есть армянская женщина. Эти антигендерные, конечно, берут абсолютно традиционное такое представление, в первую очередь это мать, и если вдруг это не мать, то, естественно, это уже какой-то, ну, это не может быть армянской женщиной, наверное. Но это мы опять-таки видим во многих странах, я думаю, во многих обществах вот это. То есть какой-то специфического, вот, определяющей какой-то, вот, я, честно говоря, не могу найти. Совершенно, абсолютно вот именно то, что это настолько аморфное, настолько абстрактные какие-то понятия, что, но наше, вот, наверное, все-таки упущение в том, что мы их не заполнили. Мы с феминистической, с гендерной позиции, мы их не смогли заполнить, и очень быстро туда ворвались вот эти движения, которые узурпировали и начали применять абсолютно несуразные какие-то концепции. То есть это совершенно вот такая трагическая ситуация, наверное, даже и наша, поскольку такое, не то что даже упущение, а наша вот такая более, знаете, исследовательская позиция, что в принципе нельзя определять это все. Пока мы раздумывали, можно или нельзя, они уже за нас все определили, все взяли на себя. Но чтобы сказать, что такое есть, да, конечно, в литературе там, я не знаю, можно найти, но ничего интересного не представляет, я думаю, или какой-то особенной какой-то черты здесь я не знаю, не могу найти. В принципе, наверное, все-таки христианство, вот то, что они понимают под армянским, армянины, там, национальная идентичность, это в первую очередь подразумевается христианская такая идентичность, но которая, как мы знаем, тоже очень часто совершенно неправильно воспринимается, и те же там священник может призывать к ненависти, к убийству и так далее, но все-таки вот, наверное, христианская составляющая, я думаю.
Thank you very much, Gohar. I see that Irina is very pleased on your answer. And we now have to finish our session this day of our feminist school. And we will wait you tomorrow. Thank you very much, dear speakers. Thank you very much, dear active participants, for your inclusion, for your very effective and constructive inclusion in this discussion. И еще я хочу добавить и на русском языке. Большое спасибо всем нашим новым и молдавским участникам, в том числе, которые только сегодня подключились, которые представляют Национальную коалицию жизни без насилия в семье. Уже имеем очень много отзывов, что им очень нравится наша школа, феминистская школа. Они заинтересованы в большей информации о нашей гендерной сети, о нашей платформе. И я думаю, что, может быть, завтра, в начале дня или марта, или кто-то из наших партнеров еще даст немножко информации о нашей гендерной сети, о нашей платформе, о новой платформе. Сегодня всем большое спасибо за участие. Gohar, Siran, мы с вами. Да, солидарность – это одна из наших основных ценностей. Вот.
Спасибо.
Спасибо большое.
Всем спасибо большое.
И вам, Антонина, за модерацию. Спасибо за вопросы всем. Спасибо.
Спасибо. До свидания.
Спасибо.
Thank you very much. Goodbye for tomorrow. See you tomorrow.
See you.